Welcome back to the Fund Your Passion podcast series. And today we're at Everratti, but more about Everratti soon. I'm Darren Selig, founder and chief commercial officer of JBR Capital, and I'm joined today by John Marca, who's our very own brand ambassador. Unfortunately, Amanda couldn't make it today due to prior commitments, but you'll be in good hands with John. He's a pro, I'm the bluffer. Over to you, John. Tell us a bit about you. Tell us a bit about John and your background and what you've been doing.
Well, thank you, Darren. Yes, apologies, you are stuck with the understudy today. I think I'd rather be listening to Amanda, but it is me. But yes, I've got a good background in the world of media and events, everything from production of Gumball 3000 events, all the way through to other podcasts and some telly, radio and other production things. But no, this is a great pleasure to be here today. Thank you very much for inviting me along. It's some big boots to fill, but I'm glad to be here.
First question, do you have any dogs? Because Amanda has 2 Rhodesian Ridgeback dogs, I think that's right. And she's been in a quest to find a new car, a car that she can fit them into, and we have this debate. Any ideas for Amanda on what she could be going into?
I'm a big fan of a BMW 3 Series estate, which I think does everything. So if that could be the ideal solution. I don't have dogs myself as much as I'd love to. Maybe one day when I grow up a bit more and have a bit more of a sensible lifestyle, I'll get myself some golden retrievers. But until that point, I'm probably not going to be the best person to advise. But you can't go wrong with a 3 Series estate. I'm looking at one right now, and I think they're just perfect for every purpose.
Wow. One car I don't think you would get the dogs into is that amazing Everatti Porsche 964.
Absolutely.
That I've just pelted down the track at I think it was 120 miles an hour. I'm going to tell everyone it was 160 and be brave, but it actually wasn't. It was about 120, but it was absolutely outstanding. And for an absolute dinosaur like me, who's like tried to resist the move and change into EV, I have to say, I'm placing my order.
Oh, that's fantastic.
As long as you give me a great discount,
of course.
You know, I'm a lowly paid finance worker. So, tell us a bit about Everratti. Tell us how it all started.
I guess as well, we should probably give some introductions as well.
Yeah, of course. That's true.
We're here.
How rude of me.
That's okay, that's fine.
We're here in this fabulous space and this fabulous environment. We've both been out, I only as a passenger, but you've been out and had a drive, Darren.
I did.
And we've got 2 of the best people to talk us through these amazing products. So I'm going to start with you, Ryan. Ryan, you are a design engineer for Everratti, Ryan Worthington, and Mike Kerr, you are the engineering director.
Yes, exactly.
So 2 fantastic people to talk to about these products. We're going to do our best to pick them apart and try and grill you with as many difficult questions as possible.
I like that, very good.
We won't be too harsh.
As engineers will like that, definitely. So, no, thank you first of all for coming to Everratti today.
Pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to host people here and show you the products that we've produced. And we're growing really fast here, as you can see. So, to go through the cars in order then, really, I guess, is the big thing. So, Darren, you've been out in the 964.
Yes.
What we try to do with all of our product, really, is to really start from the original icon. So I know from the feedback you've given me so far that hopefully we've nailed that with the 964, and it's it is very much like the original.
At the moment I have 0 points on my licence. I think if I went on the road it could very well get to 12 and beyond quite quickly, which kind of worries me a little bit. I suppose an owner would probably get used to that and try and manage the
Of course, yeah. But, no, definitely. So perhaps a bit of background from us, really. So Ryan, do you want to give a brief introduction of your past career and your history at Everratti so far as well?
Yeah, so my sort of career up until this point has always been in design engineering. For a large part of it, I was working as part of a team that worked for TfL and the London Underground, doing sort of maintenance and sort of sustaining operations within that organisation. But my passion has always been for automotive and cars. So with the evolution of, emerging market of EVs and trying to keep great cars on the road, trying to still be a petrol head, but look forward when this opportunity came up to join Everratti and be involved on a base level to design cars and just be involved in every single part of, from conception to, actually from feasibility all the way through to finished product and driving the cars, how do you say no to something like that?
So you say you're involved with TfL, but is this the first time you've put the pen and paper to cars themselves?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a great avenue to walk in. You've got a fresh set of eyes. You've not got any influence from previous marques or manufacturers. You're able to go in completely fresh head and create something. We'll go into details of the individual cars shortly as well, because it's definitely worth talking about the cars that we've driven and perhaps some future aspirations, some cars you've got in the pipeline as well. But how does that affect your role working on a car that has already been designed, in some cases designed maybe 40 or 50 years prior to you sitting in a studio and refining? Does it make your life easier, or would you say it makes things harder?
It makes things much harder, because obviously we try to retain the car's character, and I mean, a car's character can be largely defined by its handling and how it feels, just driving engagement, feeling, and to kind of achieve that goal, we are very careful with the amount of weight that we put in, where we put it in the car to retain most of the center of gravity. And when you're trying to do that, but work off an older chassis that may not meet modern safety standards, it can be quite challenging, you know, putting a lot of power through an older car, trying to still meet all of the handling characteristics. It's quite a big challenge, but that makes it more fun.
No, absolutely right. Yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head with one of the biggest challenges we have here is because one of our key things is we maintain the original chassis. So with all of our vehicles, they can easily be put back to an internal combustion powertrain if the customer so desires. So one of the biggest things is the packaging of the battery. So
when a customer collects the car, do you give them like a big cardboard box full of all the old bits and say, here you go, put it in your garage, you may need it one day?
Well, bizarrely,
is that what happens?
Not a cardboard box. You know, I think
well, it might say Everratti on the box.
Of course, yeah. But no, it's. I think a lot of people like to have that powertrain, keep the powertrain, keep the matched value of the engine to the chassis. And hey, you know, turning it into a coffee table if somebody wants to do with the engine block.
Is that feasible to reverse engineer and put it back to how it was? Is that?
Oh yeah. I would say it's much easier than going the direction that we are going.
Okay.
But I mean, obviously our goal is to not interfere so much with the original chassis that we leave that possibility open if you did want to return it. So I would say fairly easy, straightforward. Yeah.
So in effect, you've almost answered my big first difficult question. I always like to get the difficult ones out of the way first, and I'm sure it's not a question it's not going to be a new question, let's put it that way. You would have had this question before. In your words, it'd be interesting to hear from both the design side and from the engineering side, it'd be interesting to hear what makes this not sacrilegious. Now, I know that's potentially a bit of a loaded question. When I'm looking at a classic Porsche 911 or a beautiful Ford GT40, which would have an iconic flat plane crank V8 engine, these are engines that pour out character. They pour out noise and smells and spirit. A lot would say it's the soul of the car. How do you justify what you're doing in that sense, removing that soul and replacing it with electric power?
Well, I think it's an easy question, really. Okay. You say it's a difficult one. You know, I think we're putting in a new soul. You know, it's we really believe in that passion piece. You know, the reason we've chosen these cars is, I was saying to Darren earlier on, these are the cars that were on our bedroom wall as a poster as kids, and that'll change over time as well for people as we get new generations come through. But we realise it's not about turning a 911 into a Tesla. It's not about trying to make it something it wasn't, because you'd be destroying the icon and it would destroy the points of the vehicle. So we've been really, really cautious to keep the original chassis, so we maintain the stiffness of the chassis, the characteristic, the vehicle dynamics, the weight distribution and the overall weight of the vehicle. It's very easy to throw lots of battery packs into the car, over battery the car and to give range, but that would destroy the weight, the weight distribution and the characteristics of the car. So with all of our vehicles, we've been very much focused on maintaining the original character. Now, you mentioned about the things that you lose from the engine, you know, and those are things like the noise and the vibration and the visceral experience. And again, you know, the delivery of an EV is the torque delivery of an EV is very different to a combustion engine.
Of course.
So you haven't got gear changes, for example. But we've got a trick up our sleeve on that one. You know, with the Porsche, we've got augmented sound, which gives some degree of visceral engagement. You get vibration through the seat in the car, and you get noise externally of the car that replicates the original sound of the vehicle. But certainly with the GC40, they're taking that on a step further. So all the way through this process, realising the potential gap of bringing petrol heads and turning them into motor heads for the future, and helping them in that journey.
It's an interesting point. Sorry, I've got a terrible horse voice today, so hopefully you hear me. But it's an interesting point you make about the augmented sound, because previously you worked at McLaren, and I remember from my previous association with McLaren that when they brought out the MP412C and it got given to people to test, the feedback that came back was that the car was too quiet and there wasn't enough noise, and I seem to remember McLaren then having to augment the noise to give it a bit more of a roar, because that was important. Yeah.
It was very much. Engagement's a really key thing in the vehicle. I think interestingly, we've been lucky enough to have input from some really great people in the development of the cars. We've had through our Michelin partnership, we've had Tim Harvey join us and help us with the setup of the vehicle. We've had Harry Newey, Adrian's son, come and help us with the original setup of the Porsche. And both of them, I think, when we first met them and introduced them to the vehicle, they were quite sceptical and didn't have very high expectations. But as racing drivers, bizarrely, the thing they liked the most was the instantaneous access to torque. So although you're not changing gear all the time, just that direct access to torque through the throttle pedal was everything they needed. And they came out with grins across their faces and said, we get it now. We absolutely get these cars. So,
it's a very good point. I've only been out as a passenger. Darren, you've driven it. It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts in a second. But my first thought from the passenger seat, just going out, was that firstly, we reversed the 964 out, and I thought, oh, that definitely feels strange, not hearing that familiar flat six behind. But that was immediately overwritten by that acceleration for me. The minute I was, as a passenger, which is always a bit more dramatic, isn't it, as a passenger than as a driver, feeling that acceleration, and I know full well there is no flat six engine in a Porsche 911 of that era that could accelerate the way that thing does. So that is definitely that was a good kind of quasher for me.
And the great thing about the augmented sound is, of course, you can switch it off.
Yes.
So the biggest party piece of our 964, bizarrely, is arriving at a car meet with the sound on, and people see the car and thankfully look at it and go, oh, what a fantastic resto mod, and then switch the augmented sound off. Everybody thinks you've turned off the car, and then all of a sudden the car disappears into the distance in a silent mode. So it's a real party piece.
Or like rolling up to a charging station next to a bunch of Teslas or Leafs or something, and everyone's like, what are you doing here? You can't park here, and climb out, put the connector in, and everyone's mind blown.
Brilliant.
So you're a design engineer and design, and I think for me, my own personal criticism of what we've seen from electric vehicles so far, from mainstream manufacturers, and actually, I apologise to Tesla now, but I'm sorry, I'm just not a big fan, and I don't mean that from an engineering perspective or the technology perspective, because what Tesla done is actually quite impressive. It's wonderful, but from a car design perspective, I find it very bland and just boxy, and it's not for me. So I think it's really quite wonderful that you're taking cars, classics, iconic, as you said, cars that you had on your wall as a child. So I'm looking forward to the Lamborghini Countach coming in here.
Everybody has their own. So what was yours?
Terrible car to drive, by the way.
What was your poster car?
My poster car was an F40.
Oh, excellent.
So yes, you'll do a hard job, I think, convincing me to put an EV engine in an F40, but I'm willing to be proved wrong. I really am, with the acceleration.
The point I was trying to make is, I think it's really quite wonderful that you're taking iconic cars, classics, and you're making them usable and sustainable for the future, for future generations potentially to love and enjoy, and the design. And as you say, Tesla, and then this beautiful Porsche.
The contrast
turns out it's
so stark.
So
I think it's easy to forget as well sometimes that Tesla is a relatively new car company, and they don't even describe themselves as a car company. They describe themselves as a tech company that happens to make cars.
I need to hire some new design engineers.
I think so. I think so, but nobody from here, because they seem to be doing a very good job.
No one from here.
No, indeed. Let's have a quick run through of the cars that you've built so far. I know before we started recording, Mike, you mentioned that you have a particular affiliation with the 964 911. That was a car that means a lot to you, and it's probably the reason that that's your main prototype car, isn't it?
In a way, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I've been with Everratti now for just over 2 years.
Yeah.
Joined Nick and Justin, the founders, when it was literally just us three. And we've grown massively since. Thankfully guys like Ryan are massively talented and have helped us get to where we've got to. So the 964, that really came from, I back in my motorsport days when I did German touring car support out in Germany. I'd always promised myself a performance car at some point, and imported a 964 that I still own today. And a lot of the feel of that, a lot of the input that's been put into this car has come from my experience of modifying and driving that car. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So that was the birth of it all, really. What was the next evolution? What was the next car that came along for Everratti?
So I think having really done the engineering on the 964, that was very much a specific model to get us into production with that car there. Our overall ethos is rather than taking individual cars at a time, we are truly developing a product here at Everratti. So taking a lot of my OEM experience and of process and systems that deliver a quality product in an OEM environment, and coupled that with the aspect of motorsport, which is the race day never moves, and tried to sort of blend the two. I think we've achieved that in terms of our lead times, but moving towards a platform really is where we're at, and defining a process whereby we make sure that we fully test and fully verify the design of the products prior to then even starting the production of our first customer car. So for example, we'll never take a customer car, just fit an EV powertrain and hand it back to a customer. What we're about is the full renovation process, a fully integrated quality product that we know, given the testing we've done, is going to work for the customer first time.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So moving from the 964, on that basis, we then started looking at different platforms, and the Land Rover Series 2 was again iconic 4x4. You couldn't get a more iconic 4x4. Was the next step, and developing that alongside our GT40. Surprisingly, both of those cars share a lot of their architecture, don't they, Ryan?
Yeah, to a large degree,
Yeah, so we've got a lot of the power electronics, the charging, the DC-DC converter, much of the connections and infrastructure of the EV powertrain are shared. So this is all about testing and validating on the Series 2, and a lot of the testing we've done there will support a much quicker product for GT40 because it's already been tested.
See, now I naturally thought that given 911s, it's no secret they share a lot of underpinnings, don't they, between the different iterations, all the way from 964 through to even 997. There's a lot that's shared.
Yes.
And similarly with the old Land Rovers as well. I would think that if you can convert a Series 2, you can probably do a Series 1, maybe even through to a 1980s Defender.
Absolutely.
Have you found that is the case?
Yeah, I think in a large part, I think that's why...
Does that mean you've actually done some research on this? That's maybe where it's heading.
Giving away secrets. Yeah. No, I think it's... I think you're right in what you're saying. There's certainly opportunity there for us to differentiate our product moving forwards. On that very basis, that the original manufacturer developed that platform organically. It evolved. It wasn't no revolution in that.
Sure.
Which means that the powertrain that we've got in the 964 now, we could easily look at that in a 993 or even a later 996. Similarly with the series, looking at later cars, Series 3 or Defender, would take some development. And again, to our ethos, we'd fully test that before we handed it over to a customer. But
so I guess at some point, Everratti would probably like to make some money. So we're probably in low numbers here, lots of R&D and development, and it's absolutely amazing what you've achieved. But so you talk about the platforms for the 3 cars that you've developed so far. Is it then you're going to upscale production? Is this like, what's the ambition, in terms of volumes and just so we can get an idea of the scale that you're thinking of?
No, that's a great question, Darren. I mean, it's so I'll jump in right first of all. But so I think the one of the key aspects I've talked about the quality development process that we're putting in place. But the upshot of that is that because it's based on those OEM deliverable methodologies, we can develop a scalable manufacturing output as well. So having got the quality into the product, we can very easily now develop that at volume. So we develop the car here. This is our technology centre, and the workshop you see behind us is where we do all of our new product delivery, produce the experimental prototype and the production prototypes, which can be developed into a saleable product in those early stages of development. But once we're past those first PP cars, the production prototypes, we've worked by that stage very closely with our renovation partners to be able to effectively hand over the full build of those vehicles at scale and at volume. And that's great because it really leverages our opportunities not only in the UK, but we can then transport that to other regions as well, so we can manufacture in territory. So it makes it a very, very scalable approach to the whole business.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And who would you say is buying your cars? Do you have a target market? Have you been surprised by the variance of people that have come forward to express an interest?
I think it varies by the different models.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly the Porsche. I mean, we were talking about this the other day, weren't we, Ryan? But the Porsche is very much an A-to-A car. It's a high net worth individual that has maybe a Taycan or a Tesla during the week, and then has this as a weekend car, much the same as people would do with an internal combustion engine. You have a classic car for the weekend and one for the week.
Well, not that you couldn't daily this, but
oh, of course, yeah. That'd be great. One for the weekend, one for the weekend. Better.
Different one for every day of the week. Why not?
But for the Series 2, I think because it's such a utilitarian vehicle, that potentially opens up a lot more markets for us.
Of course.
And I guess as a nice segue, I guess tying in with the what you do in terms of finance and leasing.
Well, I wasn't going to bring it up, but now you happen to mention it. We have formed a partnership with Everratti, and can offer finance facilities to your customers to help their dreams come true.
Absolutely.
So, that we're trying to support the move to a sustainable future, and working with a company like Everratti. It's an absolute privilege to be associated with it and offer finance. But
I like what I've done. Yeah, definitely. No, very good.
That's not why we're here. We're here to talk about the engineering aspects.
Yes.
But it's nice to know you can.
Yes.
I think lots of opportunities and lots of new markets for us. And in terms of volumes, when I first joined McLaren, they were making 1,000 cars a year, and I was privileged to be part of the journey from 1,000 to 5,000. I think as a startup business, we've sold vehicles now. We have a large order book on all of our existing models that we've validated. And that's only going to grow going forwards. Had a huge amount of interest, not only in the UK, but particularly with the Porsche in the States as well.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to be just about one of the most well-covered EV companies out there. I mean, it's not a day that goes by that I don't open I was going to say a magazine, but I don't do that anymore. Something digital online, a story, a news feed.
Yeah.
You guys are absolutely everywhere, and I'm yet to see anything's negative, which is fantastic. Everyone loves it.
One of the reasons behind that is because, like we've said, these are the kinds of cars that were up on our walls. It's a form of art, but now it's a living, evolving art, right? And who doesn't get tired of seeing that, and who isn't excited by saying, "Oh, look, that car's back, but now it's even better, and it's different in this way, and we get to experience it again in a different way." And that's probably why it's spreading and so popular. Yeah.
So John, you said to me before that you haven't had the privilege of actually driving this amazing machine behind us, but I have had the luxury and privilege of being invited out it, and what a mistake, they let me loose in it by myself. Actually, the look on the face of your colleague when I came back and made some comments, she thought I trashed the car or something. She was like,
having done your brilliant piece to camera in the car, you said, "Oh, I've absolutely smashed it."
That's what it was.
Of course, it's a poor choice of words, I think, in an engineering
your
company.
poor colleague was literally in meltdown, thinking I destroyed it. But fortunately, it's still all in one piece. But I guess you're asking me what my experiences of it was.
It'd be fascinating to know.
And it's really quite simple. And I've said I've been out in other electric cars like Taycan and Tesla, and been asked to think what I think of it for a week or so, and they've been great. And in the future, what I think of the future of electric vehicles, and I actually think, as you've said already, I think it's not a bad thing. I think it's a great thing, and it's just the experiences are just different experiences. So the smell of the petrol and the noise, kind of gone, but the torque's arrived. It's just a different experience. So I think I got into it today with a very open mind, and I've been stuck in the dinosaur age of fossil fuels, and got into it. And I think the best way of selling your cars is just get people to try them.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Because
agreed.
what is there not to like and love? I mean, I got into it, and obviously, pretend I was 17, straight to the floor, off you go. It's just incredible. So I don't know much about the technicalities, but I did know I had a huge amount of fun, and it brought a huge grin to my face.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we drive it quite a bit. Whenever somebody comes in that wants a test drive, and sometimes we take it home for the weekend for prolonged development to see what it's like living with the car. But it just never gets old. The feeling of being able to instantaneously deliver all of that torque and just shoot off.
I was thinking to myself, and I kind of said on camera, how do I get one of these for myself? I hope they'll give me a good discount. But that for me, it's for anybody out there who's not bought into this story yet, just get yourself into a car and try it. That's all I would say. That's my experience.
Thank you.
And for those that are listening at home, perhaps wondering about what's next, can you give any teasers into the next models? We've seen the 964, we've seen the Series 2, we've had a quick glimpse at the GT40 behind. What else can people look forward to?
Well, I think GT40 is the next big one for us.
Yeah,
it's going to be massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ryan can wax lyrical about that, because Ryan's largely responsible for a lot of the work that we've done on that, the great work we've done on that. So something really special in terms of the car. We're focusing on a really special battery installation, battery package for that vehicle. Great. That's really going to support the GT40 and hopefully respect what that original car was about again. Weight distribution at the moment is pretty much bang on, really, in terms of what the original was.
In fact, I mean, it's venturing slightly more towards a 50-50 than the original was, which was quite a 60-40. So, I mean, just a smidgen, still very close, but in some ways, perhaps an even better weight distribution currently.
And I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's an off-the-shelf kit car that you're using and then developing, or?
It's again a really interesting point. So again, we want to be true to the original, and one of the great partnerships that we've developed at Everrati is with Superformance. So Superformance provide us with the rolling chassis. They are effectively our renovation partner for the GT40, and they are the only company in the world that has the rights to the continuation chassis, so the chassis that replicates the original, which means that the Everati EV will be the first legitimate GT40 EV that's allowed onto the Shelby register as an authentic GT40. So that's a great piece for us, So again,
I've got a question. It's a little bit of a technical question, which is unusual for me, given I actually did an engineering degree back in the dark ages. I don't remember anything, but anyway. You mentioned battery technology. We haven't really talked about battery technology, and that seems to be constantly changing and moving ahead. So I guess when someone buys a car from you as Everati, perhaps in the future they'll come back and do upgrades as technology improves. Is that
absolutely,
the plan?
And I mean that's why I think our position. Our position is one where we are so heavily involved in the actual design of the module and how it's packaged that should better battery technology become available, which obviously it will, we are able, or at least in a position to, go back to cars that we've done before and sort of spruce them up, so to speak, with new technology, giving us better range, better performance, maybe lighten the entire system. So instead of, relying on, let's say, salvaged Tesla units or something that people use for some other EV conversions, being involved on the ground level to develop our own battery systems gives us that ability to go back later and just improve.
Fantastic.
I mentioned about the development cars that we really see as a cornerstone of how we develop the product. we always transition those development cars across to being our first demonstrator car.
Yeah, great.
So we'll always upscale those and trim them and develop those to be a really sound demonstrator, which is what the Porsche is behind you. That was one of our original development cars, but is now production representative. But it's great that we keep that for the future, because again, when we're trying to develop that new battery technology, we can use those vehicles to thoroughly test and develop that new battery before we get the customer's car in and swap them out. So
fantastic.
And of course, when when customers or people generally are looking at the electric vehicle market, one of the big things they're looking for is range. Can I get from one end of the country in one go? Where have I got to stop and charge? Is range important on these cars and to your customers?
Yeah, I think range is very important for anybody. I think there's an inherent the first approach with many customers many people we talk to is there's range anxiety. It's very different to conceptually understand where you are in terms of emptying a tank or discharging a battery. I mentioned our approach before is that we don't over battery the car. So for the Porsche, for example, we're around about 180 miles to a charge. For the series vehicle, we're looking around 150 miles to a charge for city driving. For the GT40, slightly less, but that's more focused on being a performance track vehicle. Around about 100, 120 miles for the GT40, which on the face of it, compared to a Tesla or a modern day electric vehicle, is relatively low. But we make sure that we've got something unique in the redefinition market, the Breastone mod market, of having fast charging. So with the battery packs that we've placed in the vehicles, or we've engineered into the vehicles, we make sure that our charging rates on the batteries are quite high. So the C rates in terms of charging are very high, which means that, generally speaking, and for all of our vehicles across the patch, if you were to want to charge from 20% to 80%, it's the time you'd take to have a coffee and a panini at a service station. So and that instantaneously makes a 300-mile journey in our cars really quite practical in terms of achieving that. So
Realistic,
Fine,
fantastic.
you sold it. I'm convinced now.
So I'm placing my order on the Porsche. What about you, John? What are you going for?
I am really, really quite taken by that Series 2. I think it'd be fantastic. And I'd love to know, has anyone actually tried taking it green laning yet? Because I've heard wonderful things about EV power off-road, because you've got so much more control over.
Well, not so much green laning per se, but there are multiple little hills and valleys around here on the airfield, and as part of our DVP and checking that everything works, or trying to identify rattles, is everything 100%, we sort of bushwhacked a little bit.
So on that note, bit off the beaten track question. So I was recently in Dubai, which was lovely, I have to say, and we went out in these 4x4s in the sand dunes, going up the sand dunes like this.
Amazing.
They had to take all the air out the tyres and everything like that. How would an EV cope with that? And is that something that's tested?
Yeah, I mean, certainly physically as the car, mechanically as the car. Bizarrely, one of my experiences in motorsport was in Paris-Dakar. So I've been in that environment in a motorsport with them. I've got a fairly good understanding of that. But for an EV, the challenges in that environment are really around temperature, ambient temperature. So high ambient temperature is a killer for batteries potentially. But again, the way in which we've engineered the cars, the way that we've done our testing in terms of validating our hot climate testing and cold climate testing, not necessarily going to Sweden or to the Sahara as most OEMs would do, but we've developed our DVP to cover those corner cases. So we're confident that we've got an opportunity within those markets as well.
So what's the lowest temperature a battery could function at?
So a battery will function down to around about -5, -10, something like that. So again, normal temperatures for the environment. The performance of most EVs, as most people have driven them, really it drops off with temperature. Yes. So range is really impacted quite significantly by temperature and by certain use. But that is EVs across the board. And again, one of the things we're quite cautious of doing when we're quoting our range numbers is that we quote range with that in mind. we don't want to
So if you live in
overestimate that.
Terso, at the top of Scotland,
Yes,
the range might be a little bit less.
slightly less.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Remind me never to move there.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us along. It has been fantastic seeing the wonderful cars that you're working on. I think there are certainly some really high hopes. It might take me personally a little while to get over the fact of replacing flat sixes, but in things like Series 2s...
John, just get yourself in there.
Maybe I'll have a go.
And go.
You should have a go,
Have a
definitely.
go.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And by the end of the day, you'll be ordering.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much from me. Thank you for Everratti for hosting us. It's been absolutely wonderful and fascinating. And that's the end of this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.